Hi darlings, for those of you who've stuck with me and been watching the channel for a while now and gotten to know me over time, you will know that I have had my own experiences with chronic pain and that I struggled for a really long time with an undiagnosed, kind of unidentified back pain that was kind of misdiagnosed several different times, and I was on a great deal of medication at various different stages throughout the ordeal to try and get the pain under control. I have a really kind of winding, epic story of my journey with my back pain, and sometimes this pain would get so intense, so agonising, it would cripple me. I couldn't walk. I would have these really intense back spasms, and if they happened in public, if they happened when I had a hot drink in my hand, if they happened while I was in the back of a cab, I was screwed. There was nothing I could do about it. I would literally fall to the ground and I wouldn't be able to get up again until they'd ceased. I was tried on lots of different medications. I had physiotherapy, 2 quite long stringent bouts of physiotherapy. I was on and off work for several years back there, and it did start to get really quite worrying at one point, and it was incredibly frustrating. And even just going back to the memories of that time now where it was really out of control and I wasn't sure what the future entailed for me is lowering my vibration. Just thinking about it is just making me feel so like the memories are just coming back, you know. So I still have a very clear and vivid perception of how it affected my life, and even though I'm definitely out the other side of it now, and I feel like I've definitely got the techniques and the mindset together to deal with it and to tell a different story about it in my own life, it's still something that I struggle with occasionally. It's still something that gets me occasionally, but nowhere near the way it used to. And it's been a really long time actually since I found myself unable to walk, since I found myself completely incapacitated by it, and that is because I completely shifted and changed the way I was thinking about the pain and dealing with the pain from the ground up. I want to talk about some of my experiences in this video because I know it's something that people that also have chronic pain, and related to my last 2 videos, which I'll link below, have requested from me. You know, they want to know how I'm getting on, they want to know how I managed to free myself to the extent that I have done, and they want to know about my experience. But I think the reason that I've put off making the video for as long as I have is because of this really hefty disclaimer that I'm going to put across to you now. And it's about finding a way to communicate that and a way to put it across. So I'm just going to say it, I'm just going to come right out. Every single situation in which chronic pain is a factor is different, and it's so important to get your head around that. Throughout the entire time that I had chronic pain, I mean, I had the accident when I was 19 years old, but it was around the age of 23 or 24 when the pain started to become more frequent and more severe. Before that point, I would get back pain occasionally as a result of the accident, and I would pop a couple of ibuprofen, not think about it again, and go about my business. It wasn't something that affected my life until about the age of 24. From the ages of 24 to 29, the adventure of my chronic pain, I would say, began at the age of 24 in earnest, and from those ages, you know, pretty much the whole of my mid to late 20s. I was experiencing various different stages of it, various different problems with it, all the way from being able to work a full-time job and having it under control, to collapsing in the middle of the street and not being able to get up, not being able to get out of bed, being completely bedbound, being taken to the emergency room because I was locked in a position and couldn't get myself out. Being absolutely messed up on downers, prescription downers, to the point where, you know, the doctor had put me on stuff that was so strong to help me manage the pain that I could not manage a job, you know. So the spectrum really did kind of put me through my paces, and I want to stress that since I have had experiences with chronic pain and had conversations with people about chronic pain and kind of compared stories with people and so on, I've come up against a lot of insistence and a lot of the energy of pushing and a lot of the energy of people trying to kind of put everybody through the cookie cutter of their story, you know. I think it's really important to recognise that every situation is so individual, every single person's pain is so individual, and their response to pain is so individual. The individual circumstances that they're grappling with are different to the ones that I grappled with, and the ones that I grappled with are going to be different than the ones that you, if you suffer with chronic pain, are grappling with. So I want to respect that, and I want to honour that, and I want that to be a real point of reference throughout the video. I'm just going to give you some ideas of how it is that I feel that I got my chronic pain under control. And I just want to be completely honest about my own response to what I went through and the things that I used and did that helped me. I think it would be very unwise and very out of character for me to insist that my story should in some way reflect or mirror anything to do with anybody else's story. I'm putting this out there to be helpful. And I think the same is very true of things like, for example, the use of antidepressants or anti-anxiety drugs to help people cope with things like depression or anxiety disorders. There's so much pushing, there's so much insistence, it's a very hot button issue, and I think a lot of people come along with their own story, their own little anecdote, their own experience through their own narrative, and they try and shove everybody else through that same cookie cutter, and it doesn't work like that. We need to respect the value of everybody's individual experiences. And you know, I'm a student of Jung, and Jung was very clear on the fact that without the story, there is no cure. The story is what matters. It's not the diagnosis, it's about the story, and appreciating and showing up for the telling of the story of that individual person, be it a client or, you know, in whatever setting you're really dealing with people's pain and people's difficulty. The story is really essential, and what I try and do when I hold space for somebody with chronic pain, or when I'm talking to somebody who's still very much struggling with chronic pain, is I try and hold space and I try and hear their story. I don't try and impart advice from my own perspective or try and insist that anybody does anything with regard to their own pain that I did with my pain, because I think that's where it starts to get dangerous, and I think that's where we start to make these really vast generalisations. I started to question my relationship with medication, and this is something that I didn't do because I was advised to do it, you know, by people in the New Age community. I didn't do it because I'd read about the evils of traditional medication or any of that stuff. I did it because I realised that I really was kind of engaging in this yo-yo effect, this back and forth kind of elastic effect of going to the doctor and getting medications from the doctor, and the doctor would maybe prescribe a higher dose or a lower dose at certain times, or change the medications, or prescribe a combination medication or something like that, but I never left the doctor's office without a medication. However, I also noticed that doctors and nurses were very insistent that I should be moving around with the kind of back pain that I had. And please bear in mind that I was misdiagnosed several times before they actually gave me an MRI scan in 2013 to see exactly what was wrong. And part of the reason for this is money, right? MRI scans don't come cheap. They do try to avoid that if they can. They try and treat you and make you better without going into things like delving into the investigative part of it, because it's expensive, it's pricey, there's a waiting list, etc. So they did misdiagnose me several times, but I kind of realised that there was this really weird, conflicting kind of two sides to the coin, kind of two-faced way of dealing with it from this traditional biomedical perspective, whereby doctors and nurses would tell me that I needed to be moving around, I needed to be active, I needed to be on my feet, so that my muscles and nerves didn't inflame around the pain and make it worse. But on the other hand, I was consistently being placed onto things like codeine, gabapentin, diazepam, which is Valium, all of these different things that made me sleep. They made me lethargic, they made me really fatigued and dizzy, they sometimes made me nauseous, they made me need to sleep for a long time during the day. And quite often when I was on things like baclofen and, God, there's so many. The list goes on and on. When I was on these drugs, I would have to lie down to allow them to be effective. Amitriptyline was another example. The list is endless. 13, 14 medications all in all I think I took. And that's not including things like codeine and cocodamol, stuff like that, which I was often given in combination with these stronger prescription drugs. And I kind of realised that I was being given these medications, and I was often being prescribed higher and higher doses of these medications. But then on the other hand, I was kind of being chided and berated for taking to bed, you know, for kind of having bed rest, or for sleeping for a long time, or for not moving around so much, which I point blank couldn't do on these medications. So there was a disconnect, and I began to realise that after a while. I began to question my relationship with the medication, and I thought to myself, well, you know, consistently I've heard over the years doctors and nurses telling me that I need to be more active, I need to be moving around, etc. And yet, on the other hand, I'm being clubbed over the head with these really strong downers that are making me not want to move around, and in some cases making me unable to move around while I'm on them. So something didn't make sense, and I knew that something had to give. For a while I was considering the fact that for years I've been treating my back pain, and the doctors had been treating my back pain from a purely biomedical perspective. And as spirituality became a more central part of my life again, and I started to practice every day and really bring that daily practice into every facet of my being and my life and my work and so on, it slowly started to trickle into my consciousness that I did not want to approach this problem from a purely biomedical perspective. I wanted to think about my mindset. I wanted to think about my approach to the medications that I was on and the treatments that I was using. I wanted to shake from the ground up my entire perception of what it really means to be treated, and I wanted to bring more of this shamanic stuff in. And I'm not one of these people that thinks that, you know, all treatment should be holistic and natural and none of it should have anything to do with traditional medicine. I believe in complementary therapy. I believe in the combination of ideas from East and West. I believe in all of that kind of stuff. And so really I realised that I was not bringing the soulful, the shamanic perspective into my very biomedical, very kind of medication focused treatment. And I thought to myself, now there needs to be a more holistic balance, and that was when things really started to get better for me. On the 10th of December 2013, I decided to stop taking all prescription medication. I decided that for me personally, there had been varying degrees of success with different medications, but the ones that had been successful in treating the pain were not the kind that I could work on. And they were also only given to me for short stretches of time, because downers are highly addictive to a lot of people, so they can't really treat you on a long-term basis with those stronger medications anyway. I was also tried on a great many medications that just made me feel sick. They made me feel dizzy, they made me feel out of sorts. They might have given me some degree of result for a while, and then the results stopped, and so the doctors upped the dosage. And I just knew that I was done with it. On the 10th of December 2013, I flushed everything I had left down the toilet, and from that moment on I knew that I was going to be prescription medication free, and it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. Having said that, I really want anybody listening to this with chronic pain who might be on a course of medication to go back to the disclaimer at the beginning of the video and really, you know, make sure that you've absorbed it, make sure that it's gone in. I'm not saying in any way that other people need to do what I've done. I would never make that kind of blanket statement. However, I do feel that there are hundreds of thousands of people out there relying on prescription medication to manage their chronic pain, and they're really not recognising the plethora of other possibilities that are out there, and they're not actually seeing, in some cases, especially with stuff like muscular pain and nerve pain, how much the medication feeds into the overriding problem. And when that clicked in my head, when that clicked for me, and when I thought to myself, I'm being told constantly that my pain is worsening because I'm not moving around, and yet I'm being given medications that are sometimes stopping me from working, that was when I started to realise, okay, this isn't right, this needs to stop. And, you know, I've said it once and I'll say it again, one of the best decisions I ever made, without a shadow of a doubt. And people in my life are absolutely stunned at what happened when I got off of the medication, when I started moving around more and more, testing my limits, really getting to grips with my fear of the spasms, my fear of the idea of spending my future without the use of my legs or without being able to control what was happening with my spine. My fear of the powerlessness that I felt inside my physicality. When I started to really ride that fear, when I started to play with it, dismantle it, chip it away brick by going for a slightly longer walk, or walking up the stairs with a cup of tea in my hand, or challenging myself to just go for that little bit longer, you know, challenging myself to see what else I could do, what else was out there, what else was available to me, and really checking in with my body and being with my sense of who I am in the physical. That was when stuff started to really lighten up for me, and I've never ever looked back. Stop shit talking your body, and stop, in as far as you possibly can, apologising for your body. These are two things that I would say really helped me, that I would ask you to consider thinking about as part of your own journey with chronic pain if you suffer with chronic pain. I shit talked my body a lot. I used to say things like, if I could vacate my body and turn around and look at it, I would kick the crap out of it. I used to say that I felt betrayed by my body, that I despised my body, and I also used to apologise a lot for the things that I couldn't do. I apologised for requesting for assistance. I once got stuck in a position in the back of a cab. I couldn't get out of the cab because I was so terrified that I was going to have a back spasm, and I was locked up really tight. And it took me 10 minutes to manoeuvre myself out of the cab with the help of my boyfriend. And in that time, I apologised to the cab driver so many times. And he said, it's fine, please don't worry. Is there anything that I can do to help? You know, should I come round and we can ease you out slowly? And I just kept saying, I'm so sorry, I'm so embarrassed, I'm so ridiculous, this is so stupid, this is a waste of your time, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And actually what that did was it reinforced this sense that it was all my fault, and that I was useless, and that I should be ashamed in some way of the pain that I was going through and the experience that I was having. It reinforces all of this low vibration stuff. So just be really vigilant of what you're doing with your words. Where are you shit talking yourself? Where are you apologising for stuff that you can't control? Where are you chipping little bits of empowerment off of yourself bit by bit? And really start there. Start by giving that a real facelift. That was one of the first things that I did. And I started doing it before I got rid of the meds, but getting rid of the meds really gave me that kind of the kick that I needed, the push that I needed to start examining my self-talk, and also start examining the things that I said to other people about myself in light of the pain I was going through, and having a look at what that actually does to your vibration and your consciousness after a certain amount of time, you know, taking a look at the negative effects that it does have on you. One thing that I did that I think is just so important and was so righteous for me was I changed my chronic pain story. You know, we get stuck in a particular narrative. We really get stuck with this ingrained story, and it's the story that we keep returning to, and it's the story that we're really convinced is synonymous with who we are and how we feel about our chronic pain. But actually those stories go under the radar for a really long time. You know, they just go completely unchecked for the longest time. And when I realised that I could tell a different story about my chronic pain, that was another point at which things really started to move and shake in positive ways for me. My story was very much that, you know, I had the accident and it was really painful and it was awful and scary, and then when things started to exacerbate, it came and hit me out of nowhere. My story was that I was trapped, I was alone, I felt caged, I felt like nobody understood. I was being hounded by people full of good advice that were pushing me into down all of these different avenues that didn't make any sense for me. The doctors didn't know what the hell was wrong. I felt weak, I felt helpless, and this was my whole narrative. When I spoke to people about chronic pain, that was my narrative. When people asked me in my life, how's your pain going, or, you know, what's going on with the doctors now, that was my narrative. And again, it chips away at the vibration, it chips away at your energetic frequency constantly. I actually realised that what I was doing, and what I did for a really long time, was I made my chronic pain into the focal point first thing in the morning. And this was something that, after a while of examining myself in the act of doing that, and kind of stepping back and having that observational perspective, that was something that I realised was so bad for business. It's so bad for you if you have chronic pain to make it into the first thing that you think about and check in with every morning. And it no longer is for me now. But it wasn't that the pain went away and then I could stop checking in with it every morning. No, it happened the other way round. The pain was still there in the morning. I was very achy in the morning. You know, it was a sense of like waking up and pretty much immediately needing to work out whether or not I needed medication sometimes. I had a large stretch of time off work at one point in the game, maybe at the age of 20, 26, 27. During that time, it's more obvious that you'd wake up and think straight away about whether or not you can get into the groove of work, whether or not you need medication, etc. Because you're thinking constantly, you know, I'm hemorrhaging money here. I'm not doing what I want to be doing with my life. So you know, it's very difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, it's actually quite difficult. There's a few little sort of mental hoops to jump through if you want to get to that point where you're not thinking about it first thing in the morning, and it takes to do this very consciously. I used to wake up in the morning and the first thing I would do is update my boyfriend on the state of my back, how I felt about my back, you know, how much pain I was in on a scale of 1 to 10. Then I'd get up and try and go for a shower, go to the toilet, make my breakfast. So that would require a trip up and down the stairs, which I would kind of check in with my boyfriend and tell him how difficult or how easy it was to get down the stairs. Oh, it was quite difficult getting in and out of the shower. I would even announce to people when I didn't have as much pain, you know, it went in the other direction. I'd wake up after staying at my mother's house and I'd stayed on a different bed. So of course I'd come downstairs and the first thing I said was, do you know I didn't sleep too badly on that bed? It's really funny because there was this other bed that was kind of like that bed and I couldn't get up after I stepped in that bed. Over time, over the course of a day, over the course of the week, over the course of a month, these little like stretches of time that you spend dedicated to checking in with it and updating people with it and reviewing it and, you know, kind of trying to assess how it might have changed by certain minuscule variables, all that stuff is just leaking your life force, your prana, your energy. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that you have chronic pain. There really isn't. It's not about suppressing it. But I realised that I was becoming fixated by it. It was becoming an obsession. And I didn't realise it for a long time because when it's a part of your life and it's so much a part of your everyday narrative, it just falls under the radar. It seems like something that you should be talking about all the time. So you never really think to stop. It's kind of a little bit like being pregnant, you know, for those 9 months, people are asking you about it, you're in that pregnant state, you know, and they're saying, oh, how are the cravings today? And you wake up and the first thing that occurs to you is that you're pregnant, and so you're mentioning it all the time and talking about what you're getting for the baby and all that kind of thing, because it's a state that you're in, and it's something that's occurring in your life that's significant, that's kind of happening to you. So of course you're going to be checking in with it, you're going to be updating people with it, you're going to be bringing it up in conversation, and they're going to be bringing it up with you. So it's kind of like that, except it's years and years and years of the same shit. You know, it's not like this exciting 9 months where you're going to get something amazing at the end. It's literally acknowledging constantly that you are in a state of pain, and therefore always talking about it, always checking in with it, always making it into the discussion over the breakfast table with your husband, your wife, your siblings, your housemates. And that is just so bad for business, and I don't think I need to explain to you guys why that is. I'm sure you can imagine. So that's something that I would say. When I got rid of my medication at the end of 2013, I challenged myself alongside getting rid of the medication to point blank stop talking about the pain at all for a number of weeks. I think I might have chosen like 4 weeks or 6 weeks or something. And I actually said to my boyfriend to hold myself accountable. I said, I'm not going to talk about the pain for this long. And I remember the first couple of days that I experimented with not actually mentioning my back pain. I didn't tell him that this was my plan. I wanted to see if I could do it first. I wanted to see how hard it would be, because it's very difficult, as anybody who's got chronic pain will know. It's incredibly difficult not to make that into the focal point, because it is the focal point. That's what it feels like, you know. And for those who are assisting you and helping you and supporting you emotionally, physically and otherwise, it's a focal point for them too. So it's really difficult to convince yourself that you can get off of this train, you know. But I promise you that you can. And after a couple of days of successfully refraining from talking about it, I saw already the positive benefits of that. And then I turned to him and said, for X amount of weeks, I'm not mentioning my back. Unless it's like I'm on the floor and I need to go to the hospital, I'm not talking about my back. There's going to be no more on a scale of 1 to 10, this is how I feel. None of that. I decided to stop, and it was really, again, one of the best things that I ever did for my chronic pain. So it's definitely something that I would say to you if you are watching this, like jotting down notes, trying to get ideas. That's something that I would say really helped me. That leads me on quite nicely to the next thing that I want to say, because in that last kind of thing that I told you about making the decision and holding myself accountable, I said I told my boyfriend so that he would hold me accountable, you know. And I really think when you're trying to make any kinds of positive changes with your chronic pain, holding yourself accountable through telling somebody who loves you and who has been with you so far on your journey, and getting them to getting them to help you kick yourself into touch, you know. I really think that's something that can be considered, and something that is a very holy thing to do, is to seek that accountability in the guise of other people in your life who can be there and say, hey, like, no, you said you weren't going to talk about it, or whatever it is that you're trying. Do as much as you can for yourself. Do as much as you can for yourself. This is a really big tip that I would love to suggest to you guys as a possibility for your own journey with chronic pain. After you have experienced chronic pain for a while and you're pretty aware of where your limitations are, and you know what you can and can't do, you know what you struggle to do, you know what you find impossible to do, you get into a groove of asking certain people to do things for you that you've kind of told yourself you can't manage on your own. For me, a really, really big one was emptying a full bin. Because basically what happens when the bin bag's full and you need to kind of, what I do is I hold the bin at the bottom with my feet, and then I kind of like shake the bin bag up to kind of get the rubbish moving and then tie it. With recycling, it's really easy because everything is emptied out and everything is made of plastic or paper, so it's really it's easy to lift. With general waste and things like that, I spent probably, I guess, the best part of 3 years never emptying a general waste bin. Not a big one, not like a household sized one, because I told myself that I couldn't do it, because that when the bin's full, this pressure kind of builds up, doesn't it, in the bottom of the bin, and it can be quite an effort to pull it. And on 1 or 2 occasions while I was doing that, I had a back spasm. So instantly, for the next 3 years, that became something that was off limits to me, as was obviously lifting the general waste bins to put them out. I would never do that. That would be the job of the boys that I lived with. I wouldn't even try to get involved with that. They would have to do it for me. There were other things as well, like my mother, the back door at my mum's house that leads out onto the patio locks from the top and the bottom. And on one occasion when I reached up, and it's not a very high door, I can reach it at my height, but when I reached up to kind of unlock the lock, I had a back spasm or a twinge in my back, and I was very panicked and very like, oh no, I can't do that. So not only did unlocking the top of the door in my mum's house become something that I didn't do, but I also didn't reach up to unlock anything or reach up to get anything from on top of the fridge. So really, by proxy, reaching up too high became something that I was very wary of. Over time, these things that I was afraid of built up and built up and built up until there were really quite I want to call it a short list, but it was a big list, of things that I had told myself I couldn't do for myself. Those things that were out of bounds, off limits, need to ask somebody else to do that for me. And there were all kinds of little things. And it's just an imprint. It's a pain imprint. It's an action that I would do with my body that would make me think, oh no, I had a back spasm before when I tried to do that. Or like an ordinary chore of some kind that I'd think, I had a back spasm when I tried to do that, so I'm not going to do that. And it really limited my life. It really limited my sense of what I could do, and it therein limited my sense of empowerment. It was really, really tough after a while. And there is something in a way quite nice and relaxing about knowing you can turn to other people to do things for you time and time again, because you can't do it because of a physical limitation. But that sense of like, oh, you do that, I can't do it, that only lasts for a little while, believe me. The novelty wears off, okay? And if you've never had chronic pain and you're sat there thinking, I don't really think that's a negative, Kelly, is it? Getting everybody to take the bins out for you. I'm telling you now, it is a negative. After a while, it would make me feel incapable and powerless, especially when it was stuff that I wanted to do, that I couldn't do and had to ask someone to do on my behalf. That was tough. That sucked. And just things like sometimes not being able to pick a dog up and pet a dog, or help my nephew with something, or it's just there's a whole lot of powerlessness wrapped up in this mindset that you get yourself into, where you say to yourself, I can't do those things because of the danger of pain, because of the fear of discomfort. Your whole life becomes about dodging that discomfort dodging all the time. So what I would say is, one thing that I started trying to do at the end of 2013 that I really followed through the whole of 2014, which was my miracle year. 2013 was when I had the downloads, the realization something isn't right, let's get things more holistic, let's look at what I can do in other ways. 2014 was the miracle year where I put it all into action and it fucking worked. And 2014 was the year when I started to do more things for myself. Instead of saying, can you pass that to me? Because I didn't want to kind of get up from the couch and readjust in case I had a spasm, I would lean over and I would readjust, and I would risk a spasm or risk some level of discomfort, even if I was slow with it, even if it took me a while, even if somebody noticed that I was slow to pick something up, and they would say to me, oh, Kellyanne, don't worry, I'll get that for you. I'd say, no, it's fine, I'm doing it. And I kind of, oh, just ease it over, oh, there we go, and I would reach forward and I would get it. You know, it was really for me about testing my limitation. I was breaking down a whole bunch of cycles and limiting beliefs and negative thinking patterns that had become my reality. I was cracking that reality wide open like a mother bitch, and it was so good, and I'm so glad that I did that, you know. So if you notice that there are little things that you could try and do for yourself, little things that are testing the limit, little things that you would often sometimes ask someone else to do, even if you could try, then I would say try, you know, and let that miracle play itself out. I came to see my pain as a sacred gift. I came to see my pain as one of my greatest teachers, and it was that shift in mindset, that shift in perspective that was very helpful for me. When you come to see your chronic pain as a teacher, as a guru nonetheless, then that's kind of where it starts to get juicy and interesting. And I picked up a lot of new spiritual skills along the way in my efforts to combine the biomedical things with the holistic stuff, the shamanic stuff, the soul-drenched stuff, you know, that I so needed. I started to work with the base chakra. I decided, what the hell, like, it's the closest chakra to where my pain is. It's where people say that you should focus your energetic intention if you have lower back pain. And actually, when I looked at and learned more about the associations of the base chakra and what it's related to, I thought to myself, you know what I could do with activating that chakra? I have a real problem with a lot of the stuff that the base chakra represents and is all about. So I started working with the base chakra, and I started to place more of my focus on the chakra system in general, and I did that through half of 2013 and all of 2014, and it was absolutely amazing. I'd worked with chakras before in meditative practice, but this was different. This was really directing my energy there, taking it to a whole new level, and learning about the depths of the associations and the meanings, and what they can stand for, and how they can help you to shift your perspective on its axis. So I really worked with the base chakra for my particular chronic pain, and you could definitely look at which part of the chakra system would be potentially helpful to work with for your chronic pain. I started to combine my chronic pain journey intimately, really intimately, with my spiritual journey. I started to see them as one and the same thing. I would do ritual to invite change, to show that I was open, that I was ready for solutions, you know. I would go into deep body awareness meditations. I really used body awareness, guys. I just want to make that clear. It really was a tool that helped me to flourish. I would go to group body awareness exercises where we would all walk around the room at a glacial pace and check in with every single part of our body. And I really allowed myself to connect with the body and to think about what it means. What does it mean to have a physical vessel? What does it mean to be having this human experience, you know? And I really just shook up and regenerated so many ideas that had become ingrained as a result of the chronic pain. I said no to that. I went out and I looked for other perspectives. And I worked with energy. I'm a witch, you know, and after a while, you've really got to stop standing on the sidelines if you're a witch. And I realised that with my own pain. I was like, I'm a witch. Let's look at directing energy, you know, let's look at that stuff. Let's look at self-transformative psychodrama, the psychological aspect of magic, you know. I started to do all of those things, and it started to really help me. I dedicated myself, I really showed up, like spellcraft is your friend. And I wrote down as much as I could write down about my chronic pain experience and how it combined with my sense of spiritual evolution and spiritual learning. And this is where I want to end. And I really hope that some of these tips have been useful for you. Whatever kind of chronic pain you suffer with, I honour you, I salute you, I respect your journey, and I want you to know that from the bottom of my heart. This is not about insistence, this is not about judgment. This is really just one fellow traveller to another, giving you my perspective and some thoughts on what I've been through. And I still very much have a herniated L4, you know, I have a pronounced herniation at the bottom of my spine. That's what we actually discovered was wrong with me. The disc has bust wide open, and it's still like that. I haven't had any surgery, I haven't had any corrective procedure. I literally just shifted my mindset. I started taking more risks. I started slowly looking at what wasn't working and what didn't make sense. And I started being a more discerning custodian of my physical vessel. And that's what I want to say, and I hope that it helps, and I hope that I have been able to be of service to those who need it. And so much love. Sat Nam, blessed be.